If you like watching a thriller and not leaving your house, then I have the movie for you. Woman of the Hour on Netflix. And anytime Netflix puts out a movie that I deem is worthy, I want to share it with you guys. And why do I say it has to be worthy? Well, because for the most part, I believe Netflix kind of kills movies for me. I'm a theater guy. I have some bias. I still believe that going to the theater is the best way to experience a movie. Sitting in a theater with the big screen, with the sound, having the ambiance of the room, taking in a movie the way the director and actors intended you to take in that movie, which I also know that means because they make the most money off of that experience. But I still believe that that is how a movie should be taken in. And Netflix, for the most part, doesn't really have any big titles. I think the term Netflix original really doesn't carry any weight to it. A Netflix original to me kind of says, I really shouldn't waste my time on this. I should only watch this if I have run out of all the old episodes of their shows I want to watch, and I just need to watch something because I have nothing else. That is what Netflix movies kind of feel like to me. Although, in the last month, they've actually put out some two decent movies that I would actually recommend to you. And on the top of that list is Woman of the Hour. It stars and is directed by Anna Kendrick. This is the first movie she's ever directed. It is based on a true story. Now, if you are into true crime, I think this is the movie for you. And I don't even really consider myself to be someone into true crime. I don't seek it out. I don't listen to true crime podcasts. I would only recommend you listen to Movie Likes Movie Podcast. That's it. Don't listen to anything else. But I think for me, it feels icky at times to be into true crime, especially when it's these people covering events that are happening right now, unfolding before our eyes, and dealing with people's stories who are still living. And you think about how that affects somebody who is maybe a survivor of some of these things, a family member, a friend, and to have somebody in their basement going through all these files and doing podcasts about, well, when they ripped her guts out, they did it at this location, and I dug into family records and found this. Like, feels like kind of an invasion of privacy to me. And you kind of lose grasp on reality of treating people like they're not real people and just treating them as subjects. That's why I can't really get into true crime. So for the most part, I don't dip into it. With this story, I wasn't too familiar with it. Also happened back in the 70s, so at least there's a little bit of distance there. But this movie is based on a true story about a dating game killer. So the movie is based on true events about this serial killer named Rodney who went on a dating show, a primetime dating show, while he was in the midst of a killing spree. And on this show, The Dating Game, you have the woman contestant who is asking questions to three dudes standing on the other side of this wall. She can't see them. She can only hear their answers. She's asking pretty much all these fluffy, puffy questions, trying to get to know their personalities. It's all in good fun. Then at the end of the episode, she is supposed to pick a guy, and they're supposed to go on this sponsored trip to somewhere sexy. But then it all goes crazy because in this actual show, there's this serial killer there. And in the clips that you can actually watch on YouTube, the actual episode of this show has kind of been lost to the archive over the years. The entirety of it doesn't exist anymore, but there are some clips that you can watch. There are some things that Anna Kendrick actually based this movie on when portraying real life Rodney. And if you go watch these clips, it is so creepy to watch because the guy is kind of charming. And that is what actually happens with these real life serial killer dudes. You think about Ted Bundy and in the Zac Efron movie, how they portrayed him to be like this really smooth dude with the ladies who had some kind of charming good looks. And that's how he would bring these women in to think, oh, I'm so disarming to you with my smile. And you see that in this dating game show footage. He's making jokes. They also reference that in the movie. He's being charismatic. He has a smile on his face the whole time. You would not suspect this dude of being a cold blood killer. So not only does Anna Kendrick direct this movie, which I think she did a fantastic job in her directorial debut, and I love me a directorial debut, and I also love me actors turned directors because I feel like they have a much deeper appreciation for getting the best performances out of their actors, and that is exactly what this movie does. And I can already see her really unique vision in filmmaking from just an extensive career in the industry. But she plays a character named Cheryl, who is based on the real person who went on this dating show. Now, some of these things they did have to make up, however, because the full episode has been lost to time. But overall, what ends up happening as a result to the episode did actually happen. They do embellish a little bit the backstory of Cheryl in the movie. Anna Kendrick has moved to Los Angeles. She is trying to make it as an actor, not getting any callbacks. She goes to this one really creepy audition where the guys there are asking her, well, would you mind doing nude scenes? And she's not open to that and ultimately doesn't get the part. So then she gets a call saying, hey, we have a TV show for you. And she thinks, oh, I don't even have to audition for this. I already got the part. And then finds out it's actually a dating show. So not only is it telling you the story of this insanely awful serial killer, it's also a bit of a commentary on the life of a woman trying to make it in Hollywood back in the 70s, where if you think how awful it is now of people going through these awful, horrendous casting auditions where men are absolutely vile saying things to women, you think about how bad it is now. Think about how much worse it was back in the 70s where this stuff was just common practice. People weren't getting called out. This is way before the Me Too movement, which is also what this movie is a commentary on. But man, she ultimately doesn't get that part because she doesn't want to do a nude scene. And these dudes are so creepy about it. And she doesn't even really want to do the dating show. She's just trying to make it in Hollywood. And somebody convinces her that, hey, this will give you an opportunity to be seen. Go do the dating show. It's easy. And maybe it'll lead to other opportunities, not thinking what is going to happen and who she's going to encounter in this show at all is what is waiting for her. And I don't really want to reveal all the details of it, even though it is based on a true story. They've actually even adapted this into a movie before this, but this was before the Me Too movement. So I think that's also why it felt like a little bit more of a refreshing take, because there are even people in the audience who say, I know that guy. I need to talk to somebody because I need to warn them about this guy, and they don't listen to her. So you have that going on as the A plot in this movie. But then through flashbacks, you are learning about some of his victims. And going back to what I was saying earlier about sometimes having trouble taking in the details of true crime and the morals around telling these types of stories, I think that part was actually handled in a really careful manner where it wasn't glorifying any of the violence, which I feel sometimes is what true crime does. They dive into all these just gruesome details in these podcasts, talking about it because if it bleeds, it leads, and that whole thing of like, oh, you got to tell the most gruesome parts to get the most reaction out of your audience. I don't really think that's what they were trying to do, and I got the sense of that from the very opening scene of this movie that really set the tone, which this movie is all about tone, because you think about having such, I don't want to say great premise, but a unique premise that is polarizing and going to be interesting to people. You can't just give this story to anybody and think, oh, this is an instant home run. It is such a wild story that no matter how you make this movie, it's going to be great. No, it all comes down to tone. Because if someone else took this exact same story but didn't have the tone that Anna Kendrick was able to nail down and hone in on, this movie would not work the same. And I absolutely love that one of her biggest inspirations was No Country for Old Men by the Coen brothers, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is actually the movie that made me want to do what I'm doing now, reviewing movies. When I saw No Country for Old Men in 2007, my 16-year-old brain's mind was completely blown. It made me really fall in love with filmmaking and learning about why directors do the things that they do. It's like when I stopped calling them movies and started calling them films, I thought it was so like sophisticated as a 16-year-old. But No Country for Old Men in 2007, one of the greatest years in cinema history of all time, is the movie that did it for me. And Anna Kendrick said that was a major inspiration for her. That big opening scene in this movie, which a very specific thing that I like in movies is when they are able to capture through such beautiful cinematography a breathtaking landscape. And I really got the sense of that even before I knew that No Country for Old Men was a inspiration to this opening scene. I felt that. It is that feeling of seeing the mountains. And if done the right way through that cinematography, through the score, I myself can transport myself right into that scene. I can smell the air. I can feel the sun on my skin. And that is the power of filmmaking, to be able to put the viewer right into that scene and think, I can smell the dirt in this situation because through this vision and through this scope, the director has put me there. Not only does it set the tone visually, but also through the use of violence, which, if you've seen No Country for Old Men, starts with a very brutal scene. Anton Sugar is the serial killer in that movie. And oh boy, what a sinister character who murders all the victims in that movie in such a unique way that you wouldn't even think about it. And that is kind of the entire purpose and thought behind that movie, of Tommy Lee Jones being an aging character in law enforcement and not being able to comprehend all these new crazy things these criminals are doing to kill people. And the idea of, can we just go back to the good old days where there was just good old fashioned crime? So Anna Kendrick sampled directly from that type of violence by showing you one of the first victims in this story in a very raw and not in a good way, but it is breathtaking. This movie will make you, in a very captivating way, feel very uneasy and angry at times because of how much you hate this serial killer. Just an awful, awful person. So you have a great performance from Anna Kendrick, a fantastic job directing, beautiful cinematography. I love the way that it weaves between what is going on the dating game show and back into the stories and backstories of all the victims without getting too gruesome into all those little details. Like, they don't need to overshow some of those things. It's also what Anna Kendrick decided not to show in the movie and where the story allows your brain to go, because sometimes it is way more haunting than anything you could show on screen. And on top of all of that, this movie is only 90 minutes long. It is rare now to find a movie this captivating under 2 hours. For the most part, the only thing you can get for 90 minutes is a comedy. So I love that she didn't feel the need to stretch this story out. It is a jam-packed 90 minutes, little to any at all downtime. And I think going back and forth between timelines and perspectives really helps move this movie along. Again, if you're into true crime, I think you will enjoy this movie. I think it's one of those that you're either going to love or hate it. But either way, it is a big home run that Netflix needed. For Woman of the Hour, I give it 4 out of 5 potential suitors. Ugh.